Story 1. The echoing steps in the parking garage. The first time it happened, I was already on edge. It was late. Too late for anyone to be in the garage except me. I worked the closing shift at a small bookstore downtown, the kind of job that leaves you dragging your feet past midnight with a half-empty cup of coffee in hand. The parking garage wasn't far, but it always felt like the longest walk of my day. That night, the air was heavy, damp with the smell of rain, even though the sky hadn't opened up yet. My footsteps clicked against the concrete as I descended into the garage, the sound bouncing off the walls and pillars, doubling itself in ways I had gotten used to. The lighting was dim, that sickly yellow glow of fluorescent tubes that always seemed to buzz louder when you were alone. I had parked on the third level down, tucked into the far corner where the monthly passes let us employees leave our cars for cheap. It was always the emptiest level, and that night was no exception. When I reached the landing and stepped off the stairwell, my footfalls echoed into the wide space like small explosions in the silence. And then there were other footsteps. At first, I thought it was the natural delay of the echoes, but no. These were staggered, irregular, falling just half a beat after mine. A deliberate rhythm, as if someone was walking only a few paces behind me. I froze. The air thickened, and the fluorescent hum filled the pause where sound should have been. When I stepped forward again, the echo returned, except it wasn't an echo. I took 3 steps, so did the sound. They weren't quite in sync, more like someone mocking the sound of my stride, waiting for me to make a move so they could follow. I spun around. Nothing. Just rows of cars, their windshields reflecting strips of dirty yellow light. The corner where shadows gathered looked darker than it should have, but no figure stepped out. No movement stirred. My skin prickled with heat. I quickened my pace, heading toward my car, trying to act like I wasn't unnerved. The sound followed. Always behind me, never faster, never slower. Just there. My keys slipped in my hand as I approached the car, and I had to fumble to press the unlock button. The sound of footsteps didn't stop. They carried right up to the moment I opened the door and slid inside, slamming it shut with a force that rattled the windows. I sat in silence. The garage was still. No footsteps, no movement. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would break my ribs. I locked the doors and tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was the acoustics, just the weird echo of an empty garage. But that wasn't the only time it happened. Over the next week, the pattern repeated. Every time I walked to my car after work, the same sound would creep into existence. A set of steps that weren't mine, arriving a half-second later, following but never catching up. Sometimes they would pause when I did, lingering just long enough to remind me I wasn't alone. Sometimes they would speed up slightly, as if whoever was behind me was testing me, waiting to see what I would do if they came just a little closer. I stopped telling myself it was just echoes. I started parking closer to the elevators, closer to the lights, closer to the other cars that dotted the garage. But no matter where I parked, the steps followed. One night, I decided I needed to prove it. I reached the third level, phone in hand, and started recording video as I walked. My heart was already racing, and my breath came out sharp, loud in the microphone. My shoes struck the ground. 1, 2, 3, and then came the sound. 4, 5, 6, slightly off, definitely there. I spun the camera around, hoping to catch someone, anyone. The screen showed only the garage, endless lines of painted concrete, shadows stretching between pillars. The sound had stopped. When I turned back, I swear I saw movement. A shadow ducking behind one of the cars just a few rows over. I ran to my car without stopping the recording, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. The video picked up everything, the pounding of my breath, the slamming of the door, the buzzing of the lights overhead. But no footsteps, no figure, nothing but me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the video, turning up the volume to the maximum, straining to catch the sound of the phantom steps. It was there, faint but real. I wasn't imagining it. The next day, I told one of my coworkers about it. She gave me this look, half skeptical, half concerned, and said, "That garage has always been weird. You know someone killed themselves there, right? Hung themselves from the pipes on the third level, years ago." My stomach dropped. I didn't know whether to believe her, but the way she said it, the casual certainty in her voice, made me think she wasn't just making it up. That night, I parked on the street, even though it meant a longer walk to the store and a risk of tickets. I didn't care. I wasn't going back down into that garage. But a strange thing happened. As I walked toward my car parked on the street after work, I still heard them, the steps. Behind me, matching mine, always a breath too late. When I reached my car, I turned sharply to confront whoever was there, but the sidewalk was empty. Just the stretch of dark road lit by sickly pools of orange from the streetlights. The air felt colder than it should have, as though the night itself was holding its breath. The steps stopped when I did. They always stopped when I did, but they never went away. Now it doesn't matter where I park, garage, street, even when friends drop me off at home. Whenever I walk alone at night, I hear them. Always just behind me, never too close, never too far. A presence that refuses to leave me. Sometimes, when I unlock my apartment door and slip inside, I swear I hear one final step just on the other side, like it's waiting for me, just beyond the threshold, never daring to follow inside. But every night as I lie in bed, I find myself straining to hear, and sometimes if the room is quiet enough, I think I do. Steps, faint, echoing, just outside my door. Story 2, the footfalls that vanished on the stairwell. It started on an ordinary Wednesday evening, the kind of night where exhaustion drags you down and the only thing you want is the comfort of your own bed. I worked late in an office building downtown, one of those high rises that had seen better days. The stairwell was my shortcut. The elevators were old, clunky, and slow, so I always took the stairs down. I didn't think much of it until the footsteps began. The stairwell was always eerily quiet at night. The fluorescent lights hummed, buzzing faintly, and the chipped concrete walls made every sound echo like a drum. As I pushed open the heavy door to the stairs that night, my shoes tapped rhythmically against the cement steps. The sound was loud, amplified, but it was normal. It was mine. Until it wasn't. Somewhere between the 12th and the 11th floor, I realized I wasn't alone. Another pair of footsteps joined mine. Measured, steady, and perfectly timed, as though someone was keeping pace directly behind me. I froze on the landing, my breath held. The sound stopped too. For a long moment, I listened. Silence. Just the buzzing of the lights overhead. My mind tried to rationalize. Echoes, the building settling, maybe a janitor. But when I cautiously took another step down, the unmistakable rhythm followed, step for step. I didn't dare turn around. The descent became a nightmare. Every time I slowed, the footfalls slowed. When I sped up, they matched me, never faltering, always close enough to feel present, yet never showing themselves. The stairwell, once a mundane shortcut, transformed into a claustrophobic trap. At the 8th floor landing, my nerves cracked. I spun around. The stairs stretched up in a spiraling gray emptiness. Nobody was there. The lights flickered, and the shadows bent strangely across the walls, but there was no body, no shape, nothing to explain the sound. My heart hammered in my chest. I whispered, "Hello?" My voice came out weak, almost broken. It bounced back at me, distorted by the concrete, like a dozen voices whispering the same word in unison. Then came the answer. Not a voice, but a step. One sharp, deliberate footfall descending from above. I bolted. I raced down, the stairwell amplifying the chaos of my own frantic pace. But beneath it, interwoven, unshakable, the other steps followed. Not hurried, not frantic. Just steady, relentless. Like something that knew no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't escape. By the 3rd floor, sweat clung to my skin. My lungs burned. I shoved open the door into the dimly lit hallway, slamming it behind me as if a thin slab of metal could protect me. Silence. For a moment, relief washed over me. The hallway was empty. My footsteps sounded normal again, ordinary. I almost laughed at myself. Just stress, fatigue, a tired mind conjuring ghosts out of echoes. But then, faintly through the heavy stairwell door, came the sound I dreaded most. A single step, then another, and another. Slowly, carefully, descending. I sprinted the last stretch to the lobby, ignoring the security guard's puzzled look as I nearly tore the glass doors off their hinges to get outside. The cool night air hit me, grounding me, but it didn't erase the echo in my head. That steady rhythm. Those footfalls that never belonged to me. For weeks, I avoided the stairwell. I took the elevators no matter how long they took, no matter how crowded they were. But curiosity, or maybe recklessness, eventually drew me back. One Friday, earlier in the evening, when the building wasn't empty, I stepped inside again. I told myself it would be different with people around, with noise to break the silence. I even convinced a coworker to walk with me. Together we descended. Nothing happened. No echo. No phantom steps. Just two normal people walking down a normal staircase. But when we parted ways at the lobby and I turned back, the door to the stairwell swung gently, as if someone had just passed through. And faintly, so faintly I almost convinced myself I imagined it, came the sound of a third set of footsteps fading into nothing. Since then, I've heard them more than once. Always when I'm alone. Always when I'm tired enough to doubt my own senses. They never rush, never stumble, never reveal themselves. They only follow step by step until I'm forced to flee. But the worst part isn't the sound itself. The worst part is the way they stop, always right behind me. Close enough that if I reached back into the air, I'm certain I'd touch something cold, waiting, and impossibly patient. Story 3. The Midnight Pursuer on the Empty Road. There's a silence that only truly exists on rural roads at midnight. A kind of stillness so complete that the sound of your own breathing feels intrusive, and every step you take crashes through the darkness like a warning. I had always told myself I was comfortable with late-night walks. My town wasn't dangerous, not in the ordinary sense. No gangs, no crime worth noting, no reason to be afraid of the winding stretch of road that cut across fields and woods on the way home from my friend's place. But there's another kind of danger, one that doesn't belong to the world of crime reports and police patrols. It belongs to the shadows, to the moments when your skin prickles for no reason, and to the sound of footsteps that match your own. It started on a night in late October when the air was already cooling and leaves crunched dry beneath my sneakers. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the only light came from the weak beam of a flashlight I carried. The road was straight, bordered by skeletal trees on one side and wide, empty fields on the other. Nothing but me, my shadow, and the occasional rustle of wind through the grass. Halfway home, I heard it, the sharp clap of footsteps behind me. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. The road was empty, and my beam of light revealed nothing but gravel stretching out in both directions. Still, I paused, holding my breath, and the sound continued. Soft but unmistakable, a step every time I took one. It wasn't an echo. It couldn't be. My footsteps had their own rhythm, their own weight. These were different, heavier, delayed by half a beat, as though someone was walking just behind me but deliberately out of sight. I turned quickly, swinging my flashlight across the road. Nothing, just darkness stretching on and on. My heart gave a jolt, but I told myself I was being ridiculous. I walked on. The sound came again. Step, step, step. I picked up my pace, listening hard. The steps matched me, always a half beat behind. I stopped suddenly, hoping to catch them in the act, but the road fell silent. My light shook in my hand as I swept it across the trees. Nothing. The strange thing was, the silence didn't reassure me. It felt staged, like whoever, or whatever, was back there knew the rules of the game. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was nerves. The air was colder now, and I could see my breath curling in pale clouds. I pressed on, but the moment my foot hit the gravel again, so did the sound. Louder this time, more deliberate. I didn't realize how fast I was walking until my lungs began to ache. My flashlight beam bounced wildly as I swung it behind me again and again. Still nothing. The empty road mocked me with its stillness. The night pressed in tighter, and with every step, my sense of being hunted grew. The old wooden fence on the left gave way to thick woods, branches forming a jagged black wall. I hated this part of the walk at night, the way the trees seemed to lean closer, their twisted arms blotting out the sky. The footsteps followed me in, growing bolder, closing the gap. Then I heard it. A breath. Not mine. A ragged, rasping inhale just behind my ear. I spun around, beam slicing through the dark. For a second, I thought I saw it. A shape, impossibly tall, standing just beyond the reach of the light, its head cocked unnaturally, body rigid as though waiting for me to move again. The second I blinked, it was gone. Panic clawed at my chest. I ran. The gravel crunched beneath me as I sprinted, my flashlight beam jerking over the ground. And all the while, the footsteps thundered behind me. No longer careful, no longer pretending. They were faster, heavier, chasing me now, pounding the road in pursuit. I didn't dare look back. The road stretched on endlessly, every corner I reached unfolding into another stretch of gravel and shadow. My lungs burned, and still I ran, certain that if I slowed, if I let it catch me, something worse than death would happen. And then, silence. I stopped, stumbling to a halt, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. My flashlight beam wavered, the footsteps had ceased, but the feeling remained, that choking awareness of something watching, waiting. My ears strained for the faintest sound, and that's when I realized I wasn't breathing alone. A faint exhale, low and deliberate, hovered just behind me. I forced myself to turn, heart pounding in my throat. The road was empty. But then, at the very edge of my light, a shape flickered into view. A figure standing perfectly still, just beyond reach. Its face swallowed in shadow. I couldn't see its features, but I knew its eyes were fixed on me. I stumbled backward, fumbling with the flashlight, hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped it. When I lifted the beam again, the figure was gone. I ran the rest of the way home without stopping. I slammed the door, locked every bolt, and sat on the floor shaking until the sun came up. But here's the thing. That wasn't the end. Every night since then, when I walk home late, I hear them again. The footsteps, always half a beat behind, always stopping when I stop. Sometimes I see the figure, too, waiting at the end of the road, just where the shadows thicken, watching. And I've come to realize something I wish I hadn't. It's not just following me home anymore. It's waiting outside my window, footsteps pacing the gravel drive until morning comes. It doesn't need to catch me. It just needs to remind me that it's always there. Story 4. The steps that waited outside my door. I had lived in my apartment for nearly 3 years before anything unusual happened. It was a modest place in an older building, the kind that always smelled faintly of dust and paint, no matter how many times the landlord tried to cover it up with fresh coats. The hallways had a creaky charm to them, their wooden floors carrying every sound, the slam of a door, the shuffle of groceries being hauled upstairs, even the playful scurry of children racing home. Noise traveled easily here, and I'd grown used to the rhythm of my neighbors' lives. That's why I noticed when something new broke that rhythm. It was late one Wednesday night, around 1:30 in the morning. I had stayed up far too late finishing some work on my laptop, the kind of mindless data entry that makes your thoughts drift in strange directions. I finally shut everything down, slid into bed, and let the silence of the building lull me towards sleep. But then came the sound. Steps. At first, I thought nothing of it. People came and went at all hours. Night shift nurses, late-night students, even the couple 2 doors down who always seemed to fight, storm out, and return at impossible hours. But these steps were different. They started slow, deliberate, echoing faintly in the hallway outside. 1, 2, 3. They stopped right in front of my door. I froze, staring at the ceiling, listening so hard I could hear the pounding of my own heartbeat. No knock followed. No jangle of keys, just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. Then, with equal deliberation, the steps retreated down the hallway and vanished. I tried to brush it off as a neighbor lingering in front of the wrong door, maybe fumbling for their keys. But the next night, it happened again. This time, it was closer to 2 a.m. The same slow approach, each step landing with that peculiar hollow weight, as though the floorboards themselves groaned beneath something heavier than human. And again, the sound stopped directly outside my door. I held my breath, straining to hear the telltale rattle of keys, the shift of weight, even breathing. Nothing came, just stillness. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the same retreat. By the third night, I wasn't just unsettled. I was afraid. I sat in bed clutching my phone, ready to call someone. The police, a friend, anyone. When the steps came, I checked the peephole, half expecting to see a drunk neighbor swaying in the dim hallway light. But what I saw made my skin crawl. There was no one there. The hallway was empty. The pale light flickered gently against peeling wallpaper, but not a single shadow moved. And yet the sound of footsteps lingered, right outside my door. It was as though the steps were there, but the person making them wasn't. My nights turned into a routine of dread. By 1:30, I'd start watching the door, phone in hand, waiting. And like clockwork, the footsteps arrived. Always the same. Always stopping at my door. Always waiting in silence. I tried telling myself it was my imagination, some form of late-night paranoia. But then something changed. One night, the steps didn't retreat. I lay frozen in bed, staring at the door, every nerve in my body screaming for me to move, to do something. Minutes ticked by. The silence was unbearable. I could feel the presence of someone, something, just beyond the thin barrier of wood separating me from the hall. And then came the sound I had dreaded most, a soft, deliberate tap against the door. Not a knock, not a fist, just a single tap as though with a finger, tracing the boundary between inside and out. I wanted to scream. Instead, I lay there, rigid, until dawn's first light spilled across my blinds and the hallway fell silent again. The next day, I considered leaving. I even packed a small bag. But part of me, the rational, stubborn part, refused to be chased out by something I couldn't explain. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe the building's pipes and creaks had tricked my mind. Maybe I was unraveling from lack of sleep. That night, though, everything escalated. The steps came as usual, slow and steady. They stopped at my door, but instead of silence, I heard breathing. Low, shallow breaths, as though someone stood inches from the doorframe. My blood turned to ice. I bolted upright, grabbed a chair, and shoved it under the doorknob. My mind raced with questions I didn't want to answer. Who could it be? Why me? Why always at the same time? And then came the whisper. I swear on everything I know, a voice slid through the crack beneath the door. A single word, so soft I thought I had imagined it. Inside. That was enough. I spent the rest of the night in the bathroom with the shower running, rocking back and forth on the tile floor until daylight came. When I finally gathered the courage to tell my landlord, he didn't look surprised. He didn't laugh or dismiss me. Instead, his face tightened in that subtle way people do when they don't want to say something. He told me the apartment had been vacant for nearly 2 years before I moved in because tenants kept leaving after strange disturbances. He wouldn't elaborate, only muttered, "The steps always stop for someone." That night, I left. I didn't even pack everything. I just grabbed what I could carry and walked out, never looking back. The hallway was empty when I went, but as I locked the door for the last time, I swore I heard them. Those deliberate, dragging steps. Just beginning again at the far end of the corridor. As I descended the stairs, they followed. Not close, not rushing, just steady, patient, always stopping right behind me. And though I made it outside into the cool dawn air, the sound didn't stop at the building's threshold. It trailed me down the street, echoing faintly, like a shadow that refused to be shaken. I moved across the city within the week, found a new place in a building twice as modern, with bright lights and constant noise. I thought I had escaped, but even now, on certain sleepless nights, I swear I hear it again. Faint, deliberate steps stopping just outside my door. Every story tonight has carried the same chilling reminder that footsteps don't always belong to someone you can see. The sound of them, steady and deliberate, is a language of its own, one that speaks to the most primal fear we all share, being followed. Whether it's an echo in a garage, a chase on an empty road, or a presence just outside your door, those steps are proof that something or someone knows exactly where you are. And sometimes they stop right behind you, waiting, listening, reminding you that you're never truly alone. So the next time you walk home in the dark and hear footsteps matching your pace, ask yourself this: are they really your own? Or has something decided to follow?